Welcome to Highly Sensitive, Happily Married, the podcast that teaches you to not only have an easier marriage as a sensitive woman, but to have one that feels more amazing by the day. Where you'll hear relatable stories, love advice that works, and coaching on how to have a marriage where feeling upset and disconnected is a thing of the past, and where instead a sense of loving connection and even fun and lightness is the norm. I'm Hannah Brooks, highly sensitive person, love expert, and marriage coach, and I'm so happy to be on this journey with you. Welcome, my friends. Today I'm going to be sharing the resentment resolution formula with you. And we're really going to be talking specifically about resentment and how to release it ultimately. So, resentment, grievance, and blame. These are not easy things to move past in our intimate relationships, especially when it feels like your partner has piled on many little or even big hurts, transgressions, or wrongdoings over the course of your relationship. But when we are in their clutches, resentment and this sort of mood of grievance and blame lock us out of our own heart. They kind of put our love on lockdown. They make the loving relationship we so want deep down impossible, because we cannot be in our hearts to love when our heart is filled with all of this pain and resentment and blame and grievance. So this is why we need to address these feelings when we have them head on. We need to support ourselves free of them. Not to let our spouse off the hook, of course, but to actually be more effective at preventing future hurts, future wrongdoings, future transgressions from happening again, as well as to allow ourselves to feel so much better in our marriages. So today I want to give you an outline of a kind of formula to help you release resentment. And this is a formula that has worked really well with many of my clients, but it is just one angle to come at resentment from. And it really helps, especially with resentment around specific things, which I'm going to get into in a little bit. So stick around as I explain that. But I want to make really clear that I'm recording this first thing in the morning, and thus you can hear my frog voice. Hopefully that will mellow out. But what else I want to make really clear is that to really move past this collection of hard, angry, constricted feelings that lock you out of your heart and keep you from the love you want with your partner, there is deeper internal work to be done on your part. On anyone's part that is feeling these resentful feelings. And that's why I'm super excited to announce I have a new special masterclass to help you do just that. This class goes a lot deeper than what we're doing today. And it's called Free Your Heart for More Love, Getting Past Blame, Resentment, and Grievance. And in it, you will, like the name says, free your heart again to love and to receive the love you deserve in your marriage. So this is a 90-minute masterclass. It's really more than a class. It's more of like a course with this live masterclass portion. And in it, you're going to approach any resentment and grievance and blame from various angles and really move yourself out of it. You'll get a lot more than just the 90 minutes of the live class, lots of bonuses and extras like guided processes you can do on your own and a workbook. And it's only, crazily, $37 when you sign up by the 23rd of October. And that's 2025. And after that, it will be forevermore quite a bit more expensive than that. But because of everything going on in the world and all the division and anger that there is happening out there, I really felt like this was my offering of love and healing to the world. So I invite you to find out all about it and register at the link in the show notes. So the direct link I'll plop in the show notes, or you can head over to hspmarriagecoaching.com/ or that's a / kind of symbol, free your heart, all one word. So absolutely check that out and join us. It's going to make a huge difference in how light you feel in your heart and how much more connected to your heart you feel, how much more free you feel, and how much more love you're able to access and receive from your spouse. All right, so let's talk resentment. Resentment is a very common issue in long-term relationships. In fact, I doubt there's any relationships that have escaped this experience for one person or both people even at a certain point. And some of us really have a lot of resentment. Some of us have a little bit of resentment, but it's oftentimes a kind of a chronic thing. And it causes suffering for both people in the relationship, even if just one of you is feeling it. But if you are feeling it, you will be the one to suffer most, not your spouse. Because resentment is like poison, eating you up from the inside out. And you may have heard me say this before. Resentment is like eating poison and expecting the other person to die. That's my favorite quote about resentment. Somehow it feels like if we're resentful, the other person's gonna feel the consequences of that. It's gonna be like a punishment to the other person, but actually we're the one who feels the worst when we feel resentment. It not only feels like a poison pit inside of you, but it makes you not be the woman you want to be. It makes you into someone hard, harsh, unloving, brittle, and really walled off or extra reactive. It makes you act out of integrity. It makes you live unaligned with your values. And it will slowly kill a loving relationship. It will slowly make enemies out of lovers. And I do know this from personal experience. So today we are going to talk about how to get free of it and how to not allow it to poison your relationship. But first, what even is resentment? We got to start there because I think it can be a little confusing, honestly. I think the word is often used very generally, but synonyms include bitterness, indignation, irritation, pique, that's a funny one, displeasure, dissatisfaction, disgruntlement, discontentment, and grievance. But there are some very specific, clear definitions. Again, I do think the word resentment has come to be used more broadly than its original meaning. And therefore we feel, quote, resentment because of various things happening, various hurts, various transgressions. In fact, it's often used as a synonym for anger and even anger with hurt mixed in, but there is a difference. And I just wanted to bring this piece in because I think it's good to have a real sense of what the difference is between anger and resentment, even though they can sometimes be used interchangeably. So Google says that anger is a fleeting reactive emotion to an immediate perceived injustice, while resentment is a persistent internal re-feeling of past slights. I really think that's an excellent way to put it. Often mixed with bitterness and involving a lingering inability to let go. And again, the word that I think kind of harnesses all of this as well is the word grievance. So that's also what I mean when I use that word. And I love this piece about the refeeling of past slights because that's exactly what it is. That's why it's so poisonous, because it's like we keep feeling a slight, a perceived slight that our partner has done to us. And we feel it now, and we feel it now, and we feel it now, even though it happened then, right? And it just slowly poisons us from the inside out. Now, after a lot of reflection on what resentment is, I've come to understand that resentment is what we feel when another person appears to us to be getting in the way of what we want. So this is a really important piece of resentment. It does feel a lot like anger, but it is actually related to jealousy. Because resentment has to do with not having something we want. So I want to explain this. In a marriage, when we feel resentful of our partner, it is almost always because we see our partner as the reason we aren't having the experience we want. So maybe that experience is feeling dearly loved, but we're resentful at him because he isn't giving us the affection or the attention we want to feel dearly loved. Yeah? So it might not be that he's slighting you so much as he's not he's not making you have that feeling of feeling dearly loved, right? Or maybe that experience that you want is rested and restored, but you feel like you can't have it because your husband isn't contributing enough around the house. And so you have to do most of the work yourself, right? So you'll notice that this sounds familiar if you've been listening to my somewhat recent podcast episodes, especially Emotional Delegation 101, which is episode 192. And that is because, drum roll, resentment is always a sign that emotional delegation is going on. Meaning it's always a sign that you are giving your partner excessive power over your emotions. Because you're putting your partner, or whoever it is you're resenting, in charge of your feelings. In other words, you think that they are the reason you don't have what you want. You think they make you feel resentful. Again, this is to your detriment if it's going on for you, and of course to your relationship's detriment, which is why I want to give you a formula to start moving past it today. And then, of course, I want to invite you to go deeper into the heart of it and really free yourself from it in Free Your Heart, my live masterclass. And again, because resentment is a kind of multi-layered and can run quite deep, you really may have to work with it in various ways so as to get fully free of it, which is why I highly, highly recommend taking this masterclass with me, because it will come at this topic from other very important angles that we aren't getting into today and really give your heart the freedom to love again. Because that is what it squeezes out of you when you are stuck in resentment. So let's take one of the important angles to address resentment today. But I want to offer one more dictionary definition before we dive in, and that is feeling or expressing bitterness or indignation at having been treated unfairly. And this phrase, treated unfairly, this shows to me how much of resentment comes from our expectations, our ideas about how we should be treated, our ideas and beliefs about how things should be. So if you've missed the episodes where I've talked at length about shoulds and expectations, I call these shoulds and expectations and ideas about how things should be, or especially our spouse should be and how he should treat us. I call these relationship rules. And I have a whole podcast episode about them. But what you need to know right now is that when we have these relationship rules, or this relationship rule book, as I call a collection of them, about how our partner should treat us, how fair he must be, what he needs to do for us to feel good, and he inevitably, at one point or another, does not do those things or follow those rules, we will feel unfairly treated, like he is keeping the thing we want from us. Enter resentment. Like I made extra clear in the recent episode about where your feelings really come from, which is episode 193, by the way. When we have these rules, these shoulds, it's really that our thoughts, our ideas, our rules are what are creating our feeling of resentment. Like, let's say we have this idea, this rule, that our partner should always snuggle in bed before falling asleep, and then one day he didn't do that, we might feel like he's keeping what we want from us. We might feel slighted. We might feel unfairly treated, and then we would feel resentful. But if we did not believe he should always snuggle in bed before we fall asleep, we're not going to feel resentment when he falls asleep before snuggling, right? Like, say he gets into bed and he does not turn towards you to snuggle and he just conks right out. You won't feel like he's the reason you don't have that experience. You won't feel like he's an obstacle to what you want, to that cozy, snuggled experience. I mean, you're going to logically understand that he fell asleep and you're not snuggling, but it won't be a problem for you. It won't feel like he's taking something important from you because you weren't believing that it's something he should do. Okay, maybe you'll feel a little disappointment because you wanted it, but you're not going to feel resentful. I hope that makes sense. So perhaps a simpler way of putting everything I just said is that resentment is often a result of confused thinking rather than some way your partner is doing something wrong to you. Now, obviously, it can be totally true that your partner is not contributing in various ways as much as you'd like or as much as is even fair, but that doesn't require resentment as a response. And in fact, resentment as a response is actually a damaging response to you and your beautiful, wonderful self. So I want to really make this clear. Resentment happens when we perceive someone to be standing in the way of us having something we want. When you perceive your partner is not being who they are supposed to be for you. Notice that I said perceive, because although it may seem like they are stopping us from getting what we want, it's often that we are limiting ourselves from getting what we want by how we're thinking about things. We're kind of relying on our partner to do the thing we want for us, to be someone for us, someone they may not want to be or even are not naturally. And most often in a relationship, that thing that we want, and this may clarify some things for people, that thing that we want is a feeling. We want them to bring us a feeling like love or connection or satisfaction or attraction or fascination or valuableness or worthiness or whatever, right? Feeling cherished. The problem is that we think they bring us those feelings by what they do. But remember, if you've been listening to the podcast, you'll know that our feelings really come from how we think about the thing they do. Our feelings come from how we perceive, how we filter things that happen out there, things our partner does, through our personalized filter. So again, if you haven't listened to episode 193, where your feelings really come from, you've got to really understand what I'm talking about. It's such an important episode. Now, this is really excellent news for releasing resentment because it means that our partner isn't the reason we feel resentment. Again, the reason we feel resentment is because of the expectations or the rules, or really our own thinking, our own perceptions. Those are the reasons we feel resentment. And our thinking, our perception is so much easier to change than our partner. Truly. So that's super good news. So this episode, we're not going to go in depth about how to work with your thinking to release resentment. We'll do much more of that in the Free Your Heart masterclass, but there'll be a little bit of thought and reflection work today. And right now, I just want to offer one simple question that could potentially help free you from resentment right now. So I'm going to invite you to think of something you feel resentment around that your partner is not doing for you. So yeah, it could be a house chore. It could be, an expression of affection. Take a moment. You could even pause this and just think of what that is. Now, connecting to your heart of hearts. And again, maybe that means just taking a moment, feeling into your heart, listening to that deep, big heart of yours. Ask yourself, do you really want this person that you love, like really love, to do that thing for you if they really don't want to? Just sit with that and see what comes up. And you can follow that question up with, is that to me really loving well? Is that being loving? So it's just an interesting inquiry. And ultimately, this question is designed to kind of snap you a little bit out of the kind of the grips of the kind of thinking that breeds resentment. So again, I'm not really going to go too deep right now into how to change your thinking to free yourself of resentment and get actually more effective at feeling how you want to feel in your relationship, and actually even being more effective at communicating, because we're actually much better at communicating effectively when we're no longer stewing in resentment. And honestly, I've spoken at length about these things on the podcast already. And I gave lots of help with this in the Relationship Rulebook podcast. And I'm actually going to be doing a workshop later this year. So you can look forward to that, where we're going to dive more deeply into the Relationship Rulebook. I'm going to help you walk through it. So look forward to that very tangible way to work with your thinking and therefore your emotions to release resentment and feel so much better. Because this work is ideally done directly with a coach like me in an individual or small group setting and not in a podcast format. That really is very much the best way to get this work, to help this, make this work for you in your unique situation. And again, that is one reason I am running this masterclass, Free Your Heart. So definitely join us there. But for today, I do want to give you this little formula that you can do right away. But I know I keep saying, I want to say a few more things. And I do want to say a few more things before I lay out the full formula. So some people I've noticed are in the moment more committed to hanging on to their resentment than they are committed to improving things in their relationship. And if that's you, if you have an intellectual sense that resentment isn't good for you, it's not good for the relationship, but you have this sense that you really kind of don't want to let it go, I want you to know that that is okay, honey. That is okay. Sometimes resentment feels good in a weird way, probably because it feels like it's protecting us. And it also makes us feel sort of better than the other person, which can feel powerful. And sometimes we want that sense of power when we're feeling not as loved as we want to be, or our partner's not doing these things for us and we're feeling resentful, right? So sometimes we may not be ready to let go of resentment. We may choose even to be resentful. So again, if this is the case for you, feel free to hang on to your resentment as long as you like, truly. It doesn't make you a bad person at all for feeling resentful. But also, notice what it creates for you. Notice how it affects you. Really spend a few minutes and really ask yourself, how does it affect me? How do I feel when I'm resentful? What happens to my body? How do I act when I'm resentful? What do I do when I'm resentful? And then ask yourself if you like that better than feeling connected, than feeling peace, than feeling love. And of course, it is totally okay if the answer is yes. Again, it doesn't make you a better human being to let go of resentment. It just creates a very different experience of your relationship and of yourself in that relationship. And it frees you to solve issues and feel lighter and freer and actually to improve the whole relationship. All right, so we are going to dive into the process. I want you to keep in mind as we do this that resentment is an emotion and you are in charge of your emotions. And there is a lot you can do in your mind, body, heart system to free yourself from resentment. And you can also do things in the external world, like take actions in the external world to relieve yourself from that resentment as well. So we're going to do more of that today. But again, how we work with resentment will depend on what the issue is we're feeling resentment around. And so, although I will be guiding you through some of the internal work as part of this process, and again, the internal work is so important because that's where you have the most power. But like I said, we aren't really going to go into too much depth on the thought work and emotional levels, at least not the most direct work to free yourself from resentment on the internal level. But the process I want to share today is a pretty concrete formula that works best, so perk your ears here, for when you feel your spouse is keeping you from something tangible that you want in your life. So this works a little bit better when it's not so much about like he's keeping me from the love I want to feel, for example, like not an emotion, but he's keeping me from a thing that I want, right? Like that's what the resentment is more around. Like he's kept me from this thing that I want, like a certain trip that he has never taken you on, but you've wanted to go on forever. Or he's kept you from being a stay-at-home mom and being able to raise your kids the way you wanted to because he really insisted you get a job or you work all the time. Or he's kept you from moving to a new state. One of my best friends really wanted to move out of the state of California, and her husband really didn't want to move. And so she harbored a lot of resentment around that for a long time till she worked through it. Or for me, in the early days of my coaching practice, my husband wanted me to get a job. And I started harboring a lot of resentment because I felt like he was trying to take my dream of having my own business from me. Or one of my clients, Kathy, who talked about this on her podcast interview, which is episode 149, she really wanted a house in the mountains and had talked with her husband about it for years. And he had always said, okay, yeah, once the kids are grown, once we retire. But when those moments came and went, her husband still didn't want to get that house in the mountains. And so Kathy and I went through this process together because she was feeling all of this resentment around it, as you can imagine. And guess what? She ended up moving through and getting rid of all that resentment about not having that house. And then she also got her house, which I'll tell you a little bit more about in a moment. But I want to invite you now to pick a situation, something that you want, preferably something that's tangible, but you feel your partner is stopping you from having. So again, it can be a feeling or something less tangible, like he's keeping me from feeling adored, or he's keeping me from the comfort and coziness of getting snuggles in bed every night, right? It's just that the way I'm going to walk you through this process will make it easier if you use something tangible your spouse is stopping you from having instead of a more intangible thing. All right. So there are 7 steps to this formula's process. So take a moment, think about the thing that you want to use to go through this process, and feel free to grab some paper and pen to take some notes so that you can maybe come back to this process and do it again later. So once you've chosen your kind of the thing that your partner is keeping you from, something you want but you feel your partner is stopping you from having, the first step is to turn towards any hard, angry, hurt, or resentful feelings that are alive in you around this and process them. Now, this is a piece of what you'll be learning to do in Free Your Heart. this class I've been talking about, and I'm not going to go into it here. But without this, the rest is going to be harder by far. So I highly, highly, highly recommend joining us for that class. And the key with this is really processing these feelings with a lot of self-compassion. So there's a little bit to this. So again, join this class. You're going to learn exactly how to do this and have a beautiful process to always know how to do this. All right, the second step is to own where you are complicit in the situation. The interesting thing about resentment is we're turning outwards. In order to feel resentment, we have to be turning outwards towards our partner and blaming our partner for something, right? Innate in resentment is blame. So the antidote, one of the important antidotes, is to own where you are complicit in the situation. So that can look like asking yourself, what can I be responsible for in this situation? Another way of putting that is, how have I been complicit in also not allowing myself to have what I want or not creating what I want in this situation? So often when we ask ourselves this question, we see that we somehow subtly, maybe even unconsciously, agreed for it to be this way. Like we agreed with something we weren't actually okay with. For example, living in Florida for all of your marriage, even though you really didn't want to live in Florida, right? Or letting your husband always make decisions about money instead of insisting that you also make decisions about money. Or working 40 hours a week just because your husband wanted to, while the kids go to daycare, when what you really wanted was to stay home and raise them yourself, right? Like in that last example, it's such a clear example. Like you had to agree to go to work for 40 hours a week if that's what you ended up doing. Even if it was your husband who was like, this is what I really want you to do, you are still a free human being who gets to decide what she wants to do, who gets to decide what she will and will not do. So you were complicit in doing that. If you did that, you agreed to it, in other words, okay? So that's this piece, just looking at what you can be responsible for to have had things end up the way they are. All right, step 3, figure out what you want now. So this could include deciding to be okay with sticking with how things are. Like maybe if you think about it, you really are okay, or you want to be okay with working 40 hours a week. And if you decide that can take some intentional thought work to get there. But the most important thing here in step 3 is that you figure out what you want. Like for Kathy, she just had to look at that the thing she really wants is that house in the mountains. And the thing I really needed to be clear of was that I wanted my coaching practice and I wanted to spend my time, to not dilute my time by getting a part-time job and really focus on my business to make it really work. So in this particular situation, around this particular topic that we're talking about, what is it that you really want, regardless of what your partner wants, regardless of what is happening right now? What is it that you want? Step 4, decide to work towards that, or get that thing with or without his agreement. So I want you to remember that resentment comes from believing that the other person, in this case your spouse, is the reason you don't have what you want. But you so very often can have what you want if you get creative and work towards it. And it is your responsibility to make what you want happen, not your partner's. Of course, most often your partner will want you to have what you want, and we will be willing to work with you on that too, especially if you present it in such a way as to make it really clear to him that how deeply it matters to you. But if he doesn't want to help you and isn't on board, the truth is you really have tons of power to get or create what you want, or at least what you need. This is something you can almost always give yourself, especially when you get down to the essence of what that is. So this gets a little bit complicated, so you can just if it's already feeling like too much, you can ignore this little piece for a minute. But what we almost always want most at the bottom of things is an emotion. Unless, of course, you don't have your very basic needs met, like shelter, food, and physical health. But if the thing that you want is a feeling, which actually it almost always is in the end, like Kathy wanted the feeling of peaceful nature, right? Of peace when she wanted that house. But again, maybe you'll find that the thing that you want something specific, something tangible, but you want it because if you had it, you'd feel valued or satisfied, right? The crazy thing, and this is at the heart of what I teach in depth to my clients, is that you can guide your thoughts, you can guide your thinking in order to create those feelings for yourself, the feeling of value, feeling valued or satisfied or whatever it is. So I know that this is a bit beyond the scope of this podcast, but it is, I just wanted to mention that you can create the feelings you want for yourself. And I call those your emotional needs. You can meet your own emotional needs. And in most cases, you can create the things you most want in your life as well. So, and if it's a tangible thing like Kathy, who wanted this house in the mountains, you can absolutely work towards that. You can get creative and find a way to make it happen. What Kathy did herself was she told her husband that this house mattered so much to her that with or without his support, she would be working on moving there at least part-time. And once she made it that clear, he totally got on board, right? So her commitment to create that for herself and her communicating that commitment actually made him get on board. And she ended up getting that house that she wanted. So that is step 4. Decide and commit to create that thing that you want with or without his agreement. Step 5. If it's not easy to give it to yourself, which I think can be common for us as women, I want you to take a good look at the ideas and the beliefs and the thoughts that are holding you back from giving yourself that thing, from working towards that thing. Sometimes the reason that we haven't yet given the thing that we want to ourselves is that we have ideas and thoughts that are sort of like barriers, like my husband won't be happy with me, or I can't spend that kind of money on myself, or I don't know how to do that, right? These kinds of beliefs just stop us, right? So an example of this is one thing I've already shared a lot about on the podcast is the summer that my husband started to get extra into bike packing. It had been a super busy summer, and I was kind of actually really stressed and really emotionally overloaded from it, but I don't think for some reason I didn't notice that. And my husband kept wanting to go on these adventures and do all these long bike rides, not just for like a few hours, but for days at a time. And I started to feel resentful, like he was the reason I was stressed and overwhelmed. In my confused thinking, he was keeping me from the peace that I really wanted, right? So that was the thing I wanted, was the peace. Right? That was the feeling at the bottom of it. What I thought I wanted was for him to stay home and stop adventuring so that I could feel more relaxed. But when I really looked at it, it was peace that I wanted. But the resentment was also keeping me from that peace. So I worked this resentment process myself. And what I discovered was, again, that I wanted peace, and that I could provide much more peace to myself. That I didn't have to wait for my husband to do something different for me to bring myself peace. So in order to do so, I had to take a look at what was going on inside of me that was holding me back from creating more peace for myself. Because there obviously was something, since I wasn't creating more peace for myself. So what I found was that it was mostly just not being intentional with my time. I had all these thoughts like I should always be with my kids, or I need to have tons of time to create more peace for myself with nobody in the house. Or I had thoughts like someone needs to take care of the kids for long stretches of time. So these are all obstacle beliefs that I had. They were keeping me from creating the peace that I wanted, right? But when I saw that, I realized I actually only needed short amounts of time where I really focused on my nervous system regulation, or where I really let myself indulge in peace in nature. So that's what I did. And it made such a huge difference. So it really is important to look at where our thinking is getting in the way of us giving ourselves the thing we want. All right, so at this point, when I work this whole process, this formula with my clients, we sometimes add a couple extra steps to kind of bridge ourselves to get to this sixth step, which is actually sometimes the eighth step. But for the sake of time and not to overwhelm anyone, I'm going to skip those two short steps and just offer this most important one next. And that is number 6, tell your partner with kindness what you want and then go get it. That's it. Like, again, I carved out the time I needed to do that nervous system work and get myself back to the peace I needed. And Kathy told her husband she would buy that house with or without his support. Right? So the thing is, you don't have to tell your husband, right? You don't have to do that part, but it can be really useful because it can inspire him to get on board. He's likely to be like, oh, I see how much this matters. How can I help? Right? So then you have yourself and your partner working on giving you this thing that you want with such a beautiful feeling. But the most important piece here of number 6 is go get it, right? There was a step 4 was like, decide you're going to go get it. And step 6 is go get it. Get resourceful. Work towards that dream. Don't let him not wanting it be the reason you don't honor your desire. Unless, of course, you decide clearly that what he wants is genuinely more important to you in this specific case. And there may well be times like that. But then, if that is the case, don't use this same issue as a reason to be resentful again. Like, if you decide you are okay with not getting that house in the mountains, don't keep allowing yourself to have thoughts that breed resentment about it. Like, he's keeping me from the house that I want. Because that's lying, right? If you chose that you're okay with not having that house because your husband wanted to stay where you are or whatever, and you decided you were okay with that, you have to be firm with yourself and not allow yourself to make it his fault that you don't have the thing you want, right? It was your choice. And he did not keep you from the thing you wanted. You did. Because you chose his desires over yours for valid reasons. But I do want to most encourage you to, especially if you're not someone who has tended to put your desires over your partner's, I really encourage you to get resourceful and work towards that thing you want. Don't let your partner's desires stop you. All right, the last simple step, and this is just kind of a follow-up integration step. For the best learning, answer this question. What did you learn from this experience? How are you growing from this? All right, that's the full formula. I highly recommend walking yourself through it. I'm going to briefly reiterate each of the steps. Turn towards your feelings of resentment and such and process them with compassion. Step 2, own where you are complicit in the situation. 3, figure out what you want. 4, decide to get that thing with or without his agreement. 5, if it's hard to give it to yourself, take a look at the beliefs that are holding you back. Number 6, tell your partner with kindness what you want, and most importantly, go get it. Get resourceful. Work towards that dream. And 7, notice what you've learned. Notice how you're growing from this process. Taking responsibility for our own resentment, which is really what this formula allows you to do, and moving ourselves out of it is a really powerful, transformative experience. It's really empowering to see how much we're able to create the things that we want in our lives, and to not let the people we're close to stop us, to not let anyone stop us. It's so empowering to see and feel that you can move yourself free of the suffering and that sort of diminishment of love that resentment brings. It's empowering to see that your resentment actually is a signal to point you to where you have changes to make in yourself and in your life, instead of it being a signal that means your spouse needs to be different. So let me say that again. It's empowering to see that your resentment is a signal to point you to where you have changes to make in yourself and your life, instead of letting it be a signal that your spouse needs to be different. That said, you may also, as always, want to communicate effectively and skillfully about what you want. But how to do that is not today's topic. So I hope that this process works for you well. It's been incredible for me and many of my clients. And I do want to make sure that I'm really clear. Sometimes resentment takes persistence to clear up. Sometimes we have to come at it from various angles. Sometimes we do need to go quite a bit deeper than this process. Sometimes this process won't work until we've cleared up some of the underlying resentment and closure of your heart due to a pile of hurts and transgressions that you cannot forgive. And you might need support to do that. It's very normal to need support to do that, to look deeper and to go deeper. So I'm here for you to do so. And so is the Free Your Heart for More Love, Moving Past Blame, Resentment, and Grievance Masterclass. You can learn more about that over at hspmarriagecoaching.com/freeyourheart. In this course, you're going to choose one primary thing that you're feeling resentful about or aggrieved about in your relationship, and then you're going to move through a deep process, a multi-layered process to finally stop holding on to the pain and bitterness around it and truly free your heart to feel peace and even love again. And you're going to be able to use this same process for any other thing that you know you want to move past. You won't have to forget what happened. You won't let your spouse off the hook. You're just going to no longer be poisoning your own beautiful heart and health by holding on to the anger and bitterness. You're even going to be able to address and resolve the issues between you and your partner so much better after this, improving the chances that these kinds of things won't happen again between you. You're going to leave this time not just feeling lighter and more free, but you're going to have this concrete, fully guided process that really works to free that big heart of yours from the bitter weight of resentment and grievance forever into the future. So you're always going to know how to get back to the lightness and the ease and that loving essence at your core. If there is one thing I see in pretty much every marriage that really drags it down, it's resentment, blame, and grievance. Whether it's only a little of it or a lot of it in your marriage, it is time to move past it. This masterclass is the way to do so. So join us now. You can head to the description page and learn all about it and all that you get, which hint is a lot more than just the live class. And you can join us there. The live part of the course is happening Friday, the 24th of October. And I'd love for you to be there live so you can get my direct help and get your questions answered. But if you really can't be there live, do not worry. There will be a recording and you'll get to have access to this course for the full life of the program, which is for years and years to come. So head over to hspmarriagecoaching.com/freeyourheart and sign up now. All right, my dears, I hope this has helped you release some resentment. And I know that if you join me in this class, it will truly free your heart up so much more. Be